The reason the FDA approved it is it appeared to be that there was a lot of people that used to work had key positions, that had worked for Monsanto, came over to the FDA and managed to get the FDA to approve it.
It's revolving doors that move up. It's kind of like a double helix, a spiral.
Revolving door?
Yes, revolving door.
The revolving door is not just in agriculture. It tends to be in many, many areas.
Donald Rumsfeld was the CEO of Searle, which was a Monsanto subsidiary. The former U.S. Trade Ambassador, Mickey Cantor, ended up on Monsanto's board. Supreme Court Judge Clarence Thomas used to work for Monsanto.
Monsanto revolving doors. The state of affairs in 1999 includes Linda Fisher moves from the Environmental Protection Agency to Monsanto, Michael Friedman from the FDA to Monsanto, Marcia Hale and Josh King from the White House to Monsanto, Margaret Miller from Monsanto to the FDA, William Ruckelshaus from the EPA to Monsanto, and let's not forget Michael Taylor, who went back and forth several times.
Once your mission carried out by the FDA, you became Monsanto's vice president for public policy.
Right.
So there is no conflict of interest for you.
No, and again, the rules are the rules, and I played within the rules. I think in terms of public acceptance, it's been one blunder after another. If you're trying to have a strategy for having the public understand and accept the new technology, having the first application of it be related to milk, which we already have more than we need, it created, it helped create a climate of
suspicion.
I think the idea that companies are not required in every case of a GMO to submit the product to FDA, such as is required in Europe, I think that from a public confidence, public acceptance standpoint, that's not a sufficient system. I personally have said that Congress should change the law. Congress should create a mandatory notification system that ensures that every product is looked at by FDA and that FDA makes a safety judgment about every product.
That's some very compelling testimony. It seems that Michael Taylor has qualms about the policy he signed in 1992. What about the FDA's own scientists? Was there a consensus on the GMO regulations? FDA documents show they ignored GMO safety warnings from their own scientists, written by Steve Drucker. Lawyer Stephen Drucker represents a coalition of nonprofit associations. He sued the FDA, forcing it to declassify its internal files on GMOs.
We received over 44,000 pages from the FDA's own files, and they revealed that the FDA has been lying to the world since 1992, if not before. But they continue to lie. They are still lying. They claim that there's an overwhelming consensus in the scientific community that genetically engineered foods are as safe as their conventionally produced counterparts. And they claim that there has been sufficient data to back up this consensus. Both of those claims are blatant lies. There are several examples. For instance, Dr. Louis Priebel of the FDA's microbiology group wrote, quote, "There's a profound difference between the types of unexpected effects from traditional breeding and genetic engineering," unquote. Then Dr. Priebel added in his memo that some of the aspects of genetic engineering may be more hazardous. The concern expressed by the FDA's various scientific experts was so clear and unmistakable that the FDA official whose job it was to track and summarize the scientists' input, Dr. Linda Call, wrote a memo to the FDA biotechnology coordinator, Dr. James Mariansky.
According to the internal FDA's files, which have been declassified now, there were many in-house critics, among the scientists of the FDA, about the proposed policy. I have, for instance, a memorandum sent to you by Linda Call.
Right. She stated, "The processes of genetic engineering and traditional breeding are different.
Traditional breeding are different, and according to the technical experts in the agency,
They lead to different risks.
different risks.
The point was that we had many people with many different views. Linda Call, of course, wrote that in her memo, but in fact, when we finished the policy, all the scientists agreed with the policy. Now, FDA, of course, looked at the use of genetic engineering and has no information that simply the use of the techniques creates products that differ in safety or quality.
Even before the consistent warnings in the memos from the FDA's own scientists, the FDA had very clear warning because the very first genetically engineered food supplement that came to market in the United States caused a major epidemic.
Do you remember what happened in '89 with L-tryptophan? You remember?
Yes.
It was a bioengineered amino acid. We know very well what's amino acid and
Right.
That killed dozens of people and made hundreds and hundreds sick.
it caused an epidemic of an unusual disease called EMS.
Right.
And how many people died?
Right, but we have many.
37, and more than 1,000 people disabled. You remember?
I do
And
remember.
you said, according to FDA administrative record, we do not yet know the cause of EMS, nor can we rule out the engineering of the organism. Did you say that? That I read?
Yes.
Amazing. James Mariansky can't rule out the possibility that it's the genetic manipulation itself that triggers unexpected side effects. But he did nothing. Have any independent scientists investigated this question, which is crucial for consumers? Arpad Pustai, world-renowned scientist, lost his job when he warned about GE Foods. 1998. Arpad Pustai worked for the Rowett Institute in Scotland. At the Ministry of Agriculture's request, he led a study on genetically modified potatoes with a budget of over €2 million and a staff of 30 researchers to prepare the arrival of GMOs in Great Britain.
We were all enthusiastic about it. I was enthusiastic about it. The ministry thought that if we did this study, looking at all aspects, then it would be an endorsement of GM. And when they introduce it, they would say that the foremost laboratory in Europe, nutritional laboratory, had looked at them and they found them all right.
Arpad Pustai specializes in lectins. These proteins function as an insecticide protecting plants against aphids. Rowett scientists had created potatoes that were resistant to aphids and into which they introduced a snowdrop gene, which produces the lectin in question. Beforehand, they verified that in their naturally occurring state, lectins themselves do not pose a health risk. The genetically modified potatoes were tested on rats.
It had twofold effects. First, it started to increase a proliferative response in the gut. And that you don't like because this is possibly, I'm not saying that it is cancerous, but what it does, it can have an adjuvant effect on any chemically induced tumor. The other thing is the immune system was certainly got into high gear. And that was, we don't know whether it's good or bad, but it certainly did recognize the GM potatoes as alien. And we were convinced that this insertion is causing the problem and not the transgene. As I said, the transgene, when we did it in isolation, even at 800-fold concentration didn't do any harm. It was a very important point because the American FDA is going on by about a neutral technology. And what we did say and what we did publish was actually corroborated, confirmed that it was not the transgene which was the problem, but it was the technology.
While the first shipments of genetically modified soybeans were arriving in Great Britain, Arpad Pusztai's superiors authorized him to be interviewed by the BBC.
As a scientist actively working on the field, I find that it's very, very unfair to use our fellow citizens as guinea pigs. They will never forgive me for that. Monsanto did see the importance of our findings. Don't worry about it. Even before the broadcast went out, they already knew because the Scottish Crop Research Institute did get a lot of money from Monsanto.